Welcome to the summer of 1916. Let me bring you up to date on something before I discuss American neutrality or American entry into World War I. As I alluded to in my last video, there are lots of different directions that this game can go. Japanese, Italian, Chinese entry into the war, plus all of the neutrals, and there are many significant ones. Have varying degrees of probability of joining. So in this test, which has some similarities to previous tests, but some new things also occurred. As you look over towards the Japanese were invited by the British to join this, the Central Entente, or excuse me, the Entente, and otherwise known as the Allies. And what happened is there is a probability that they will, but the Japanese were disinclined to do so in this particular test, and they've become a power all their own. And you'll notice that they have dreadnoughts on the board. And if you take a look, this is a huge game for naval expansion between the Germans and the Americans, and even the Italians, but significantly the Japanese. Everybody's buying dreadnoughts. And so that has had a tremendous impact and could possibly change the victory points. Because the Japanese joined the Central Powers, the Chinese automatically joined the Entente. But they've had some problems too. They fragmented into some warlords, some other elements within Japan, within China, have joined different powers between Russia, Germany, and Japan themselves. So China has made some impact on the game, but they haven't been able to run the Japanese out of the mainland, although they did take the Germans out of German Shandong. So that's the East. Things are not quiet across the globe. Africa continues to be a battleground, although the British are wiping their way through there. But the big change in this game was the Italians. The Italians also joined the Central Powers. Now, they were originally aligned for a defensive pact with the Germans prior to World War I. But because the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians attacked, even though they didn't technically mobilize first, but because they attacked, the Italians prevaricated and eventually decided not to join the Central Powers. And that's in history. In this game, they are part of the Central Powers. But again, they're a weak element, and we'll see how or if they prevail. Right now, it really looks like the British are going to be able to clean up the Middle East, and they have focused a lot of their attention on that. Now, the crazy thing is the Germans and the British and their maneuvers. Yeah, the British have just wiped out a small German fleet and are blockading Germany up along Denmark. But at the same time, the Germans have swung out. And so it's a very unusual situation. I'm pretty sure that we're going to lose a significant chunk of both fleets. So what does that have to do with the Americans? Because of all of these actions, the American peacetime income went up fairly quickly between the number of dreadnoughts being built by the Japanese and the attack on neutrals that have taken place by the Central Powers. American income has gone up. So where's America to go from here? Now, in the game, essentially the way that it's designed, while the American income is increasing, there is a point in time where they can fight a limited war against the Japanese. They decided not to do that, but it is a choice that the Americans can make. And although they have added dreadnoughts to the Pacific, they haven't done much else. So now the American income is at full strength, 37 IPP. And they have a choice to make. and we did this by design, because as everybody knows, it wasn't, in the very early portion of World War One, the president worked hard to try and create peace. He asked each of the warring nations to submit what their war aims were. Now, those nations didn't want to do that because of so many hidden treaties and agreements and things that eventually would come out anyways. Because, for example, when the Russians fell, the Soviets published many of the secret treaties and embarrassed the Entente, or the Allies. But as of right now, they're secret, and they certainly didn't want to tell the U.S., and everybody had become so entrenched in their desire to hold on to territory that they had taken that they weren't willing to come to the peace table yet. So where are we with this game? At the point where the Americans are at full wartime income, they have three choices. And once they choose one, they have to stick with it. Number one, they could decide to join the war and fight the Central Powers. Number two, they could just decide to fight the Japanese and attempt to correct what's going on, their perception between China and the Pacific. And number three, they could attempt peace without victory, which is a firm neutral stance that forces an end to the game. Now, if you're playing as the Americans, you may ask yourself, why would I want to do that? Well, some of it's related to victory conditions. You may look across the Allies and determine, this is the best opportunity. Those Central Powers are doing very well. Maybe I want to end the game. Or maybe you're just tired. Even as the U.S. player, even if you're playing other powers on the Allied side, you may decide it's just a good time to end this game. Right now, the Russians haven't collapsed. You could potentially prevent the Russian collapse in the Russian Civil War. So that's some of the things that the U.S. might consider. You can calculate your own victory objectives. And the victory objectives are supportive of each of those courses of action. And some of them are mutually exclusive, and that's okay. It just means that the U.S. can't achieve every victory objective available to them. And it's by design. That's the way the game works. But it may be the best solution for the Allies. So where will the U.S. go in this game? What does it look like? And the outcome? I've chosen to, as the U.S., to force peace without victory. And we'll see, because it is a variable, random type of event, as the U.S. forces that, and I won't get into the mechanics right now, but we'll see how much can be accomplished before that peace is joined by all sides at the conclusion of this game.